Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here today. My questions, Chair, were sent in advance about 2 weeks ago, a little bit under 2 weeks ago, and deal with past presentations by CSIRO. And so my first question is that, as I said in the letter, number one, do you stand by CSIRO's implied claim that Marcotte and Le Cavalier are the best evidence CSIRO has for showing that the rate of temperature change today is unprecedented in the last 10,000 years?
I'll just very briefly intercede there, Senator Roberts, because there's obviously been an exchange of correspondence here. You've written to CSIRO, and I've just received a copy of their response to you. Dr. Marshall,
I haven't seen CSIRO.
I think it's just about to be circulated to the committee. Dr. Marshall, were you intending for that to be tabled by the committee?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, then in that case, we'll circulate copies to committee members for tabling. Sorry, Senator Roberts.
No, Dr. Marshall was about to answer.
And Senator, I'll let Dr. Mayfield answer the detail of your question.
So, Dr. Peter Mayfield, Executive Director for Environment, Energy and Resources. So, Senator, yes, we have prepared a response to the letter that you sent us. I do have copies of that here, and an electronic copy was provided to the Secretary. So, there's an opportunity to sort of look at our response in detail. In regard to Marcotte, yes, we do stand by the conclusions of that paper.
Stand by Marcotte?
Yes.
Okay. And what about Le Cavalier?
Yes, both papers.
Le Cavalier
we believe
too.
they're the best evidence.
Okay.
So
Thank you. That's good. Why did second question? What did CSIRO rely on before Marcotte 2013? Say in the 1980s, when Bob Hawke was the first Prime Minister to raise the issue of anthropogenic climate change, said to be due to carbon dioxide from human activity.
So, Senator, so the state of the science in the Australian context has been provided by the volume Greenhouse Planning for the Future, which is published by CSIRO in 1988 and is still available. And it was already very evident in the 1980s that anthropogenic emissions of carbon dioxide were altering the chemistry of the atmosphere.
Excuse me, the chemistry of the atmosphere, but not the temperature of the Earth?
Chemistry of the atmosphere is at that point in time, and temperature record was also changing.
Okay, thank you. Third question, at what stage did CSIRO start giving significant advice to governments on anthropogenic climate change?
So CSIRO has been providing advice to government in relation to greenhouse matters for more than 60 years. So it's been a long history of us providing advice in this area.
Thank you. Then I had my fourth question was to Dr. Mayfield. I need Dr. Mayfield to specify one, the slides and specific slides and specific data to which he refers, and on which his answer relies when I asked my previous question, which you're familiar with, Dr. Mayfield.
So, Senator, we've provided the details many times to you. You'd appreciate that in each of these papers, which have been published by peer review, the analysis around statistical substance of the various measurements.
No, I'm not going to let you off the hook. That's a dodging of the question. The question is, to which of the specific slides or specific data in the presentations do you refer to when you stood up last time, Senator Estimates, and said it's in the presentations? Which of the slides, I want to know specifically, contain the statistical analysis that proves that carbon dioxide from human activity has that there is a change in the climate, in any factor of climate?
So, as you're aware, Senator, there's a number of papers, multiple lines of evidence
No.
around...
I'm asking you for the specific slide and the specific data to which you refer. I'm not going to take any more of this vague nonsense.
So
I want the specific slide, specific data.
In the slides, you'll see there's a
do it?
number of different references. Obviously, we work with the work of Marcotte. More recently, there's the work of... that's coming from... just bear with me for a second. Kaufman, sorry.
How do you spell that?
So it's Kaufmann.
Okay.
So it's a paper that's been produced in 2020, which also undertakes an analysis of a wide range of methodologies, looking at both the
2020
historical record and the current record of temperature change.
So I asked you on Thursday, the 24th of October 2019, a year ago, to provide empirical scientific evidence that shows, quote, statistically significant variation that proves there has been a process change. That is variation that is beyond or outside natural, inherent, cyclical or seasonal variation over the last 350 years. You stood up and said, it's in here, we've given it to you. That is not correct. I want to know specifically what the data is in those presentations that
Senator,
indicate statistically
we've provided
significant
you with a
change.
number of references. Those are the references that we believe show
I want to
that.
know where...
You don't agree with us, but that's what we believe.
You have never presented, CSIRO has never presented any response to that question, because the first time that question was asked was in the Senate estimates last year. CSIRO has never addressed that question. Your statement is false, if that's what you're implying.
That's incorrect, Senator. The data is in the papers that we refer to.
No, I said show
Part
me
of those
where
pulling
the
that
statistically
science
significant...
together is about
Dr.
undertaking that
Mayfield-
sort of statistical
Sorry,
analysis
Dr. Mayfield, I'll
so
just
that you show
briefly
meaningful trends.
intercede here. Senator Roberts, could I ask that you allow the witnesses an opportunity to finish their answers to your questions before you interject or ask a follow-up question?
Chair, he's not answering the question.
Well, Senator Roberts, you may be unsatisfied with the answer that he's giving, but that doesn't give you a right to interrupt him. You have to allow witnesses to conclude their answers, and then you can ask a follow-up question to challenge that answer if you wish.
So as I said, Senator, those various papers, part of doing peer review process, you go through the statistical analysis, you show what is a meaningful trend versus what is not a meaningful trend due to the uncertainty in those measurements. And we stand by those papers and those measurements and those peer review processes.
I want on record that never has CSIRO in any of their presentations to me made any reference, any statement about statistically significant variation in climate. Not at all. I asked it for the first time this time last year.
You could ask CSIRO to read the paper to you.
Senator
Yeah. Could you specify the
But
paper?
let's not-
Could you
I've already
specify the
specified
paper?
the papers. So
The exact papers. Because
So-
you have never referenced them in any way in any of the
Okay.
presentations. So I want to know the specific papers.
we've given you the papers, Senator.
Which ones?
So it's Marcotte, it's Le Cavalier, and more recently
Okay, so let's go
Kaufman.
on to the second part. Now that you've come on that, specify the statistical analysis techniques that were used.
So, Senator, there's many techniques that are used. There's thousands of papers.
No, the ones that you rely upon to make the statement that
Many
there is a
techniques-
statistical
So that's-
significant change.
Please.
I want to know the specific ones.
Well, that's part of the peer review process that's undertaken for each of these papers, Senator. So if you choose to
All
talk
right,
to the
thank you.
authors, they'll be able to talk you through their specific work.
We contacted the author of Le Cavalier, which you recommended, and he will not divulge his information. That's what
can't-
you rely upon, people who do not divulge their information. So let's go to the third one then. The relevant statistical levels of confidence from the analysis of the climate factor that you've identified. So what is the level of confidence in the analysis?
So, Senator, again, I've just referred to my previous answers.
Thank you. Could you specify the time interval of data for which the statistical analysis was applied?
Senator, I can't answer that question. It's a question that should be directed towards the author of the paper.
Thank you. Question 5.
Very much a detail, sir.
Yes, it certainly is.
Senator Roberts, I might have been remiss last time. I think I promised to send you a copy of this, and I don't know if I did or not, if my office did, but if not,
No,
I
you
brought a
didn't.
copy, and I'll leave this here with you. It does have a map of the projections for temperature.
No, I'm after empirical scientific evidence. That's what I've been through
It's-
all the way along.
It's based
Not the
on
projections.
It's based on data since 1950 and successfully predicting.
I want to
the
know
last
statistically
20 years of
significant
data.
change, Dr. Marshall.
Well, I think you'll get it from here and the references here in Senator, but I'll give
Thank
you this
you.
to you if I can. That'll
Thank you.
hopefully be
Good.
helpful.
Now, Dr. Marshall, I also said in my letter that I hope you agree that the only valid analysis for such policies, climate change and supporting of renewable subsidies, is specific empirical scientific evidence with a logic proving causation and quantifying the effect of carbon dioxide from human activity on climate factors such as atmospheric temperatures. I hope you understand the need to justify such policies on solid scientific evidence quantifying cause and effect. Such quantified evidence is needed to implement such policies and to monitor the effect of such policies. Without the specific quantified relationship between human carbon dioxide output and climate factors, it is not possible to do cost-benefit cases nor track progress. So my question to you, number 5, was, if you disagree with this reasoning, please provide me with what you see as the alternative basis for policy.
So, Senator, we base our work on the measured changes in climate since about 1950. We have, for example, directly intervened by breeding different strains of wheat to prevent the wheat yield from going down because we don't want the impact of drought or increased temperatures or shifts in rainfall to reduce the productivity of Australia's wheat industry. So we have data since 1950 that shows these effects are happening. We know that the nation has become drier in the south, wetter in the north, and we know that the temperature has come up. That's not projections, they've been measured. But because we've known that, because we predicted that some years ago, some decades ago, we're able to successfully intervene to help industry navigate those changes without a loss in their profitability. And that's why we do the modelling, Senator, to try and understand how to help industry navigate changes in our environment.
So let me put it bluntly. Do you or do you not believe that policy should be based on a quantified, specified relationship between cause and effect? In other words, this much carbon dioxide with the amount specified leading to this much temperature change?
Senator, I think policy should be based on the best science available, and it should be data-driven. Data-driven. And I've just given you the data that drove us to make the interventions.
You've talked about having the data.
Yeah. It's also in the
do
state of the climate.
you agree or not that policy should be driven by specified, quantified relationships between cause and effect?
I think policy should be data-driven, and it should be monitored and measured and evaluated using data.
Okay, thank you.
So, Senator, if I can add to that. So science, peer-reviewed science does provide that foundation on which policy can be built. In terms of the papers that we've talked to you about, we note that there's been at least 265 other papers which have referenced Marcotte as part of the peer review process, and to date no one has come up with an argument that says that paper is not valid. So the peer review process is at play there and has basically reinforced that paper is correct.
Marcotte himself said that the 20th century temperatures on which you're relying are not robust. Marcotte himself. So much for peer review.
With your statement.
So let's move on to question 6. Australia has already done much to destroy its energy grid, yet as an overseer of taxpayers' funds, taxpayers' resources, I need to know whether this has shown up in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, and if so, how has it shown up and to what extent? Please provide empirical scientific evidence on the effect of carbon dioxide levels and temperatures from Australia's cuts to human carbon dioxide output. In other words, all the pain we're going through economically, where is it showing up in the global carbon dioxide levels?
So, Senator, as I think you and I have discussed before, Australia is barely 1%, 1.2 or 1.3% of the world's emissions. Therefore, any direct changes we make in this country are unlikely to have any impact on the global levels of
So
carbon
we're not going to
dioxide.
have any impact on the temperature then?
Well, 1.3% impact. Senator, however, our science can have an impact. For example, Future Feed, which has solved what seemingly was an impossible problem.
I
how
want to know the
reduce
impact of
emissions from
Australia's
cattle.
carbon dioxide payment, because people are paying an extra $1,300 per household, Dr. Marshall. On your salary, that's trivial. But on someone on the median income of $49,000, that is painful, extremely painful. Dan McDonald, a farmer in Queensland, and many farmers have lost the rights to use their property because of policies enacted by this government and previous governments. On $800,000, that's easy for you to wade through. But these people are suffering.
Senator, I'm not sure I understand your question here. Are you saying that there's some connection between things that CSIRO has done and these people suffering?
Your advice
has
has been cited by many ministers, both Labor and Liberal National, for the painful impositions of policies on our country. And people are paying for that through the hip pocket and through the loss of the rights to use their property that they own and have paid for. Your policy, your so-called support, according to ministers, is the reason for that. And I'm not getting evidence of quantified impact of our carbon dioxide. And you've just said you can't see any evidence in the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere because of Australia's carbon dioxide cuts.
Senator, I've just said that Australia has a relatively small direct impact on the carbon dioxide levels because
Can you
we're
show me the
small.
evidence that says we are reducing carbon dioxide levels
The evidence,
in the atmosphere?
the evidence that Australia is reducing.
Australia's impacts on energy, on agriculture,
So
are
that's-
resulting in a reduced temperature, reduced levels of carbon dioxide.
So the reduction in emissions has been reported by the Department of the Environment. So that would be a question for them, Senator.
You just answered my question.
Senator,
Thank you very much.
If I could add to that as well. So global CO2 levels are measured through the Global Carbon Project, which works from data
In
from all
part they're
three-
measured, in part they're
Senator
residuals.
Roberts.
So my last question, have global attempts, so we forget about Australia's little minuscule contribution, have global attempts to cut human production of carbon dioxide shown up in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, and if so, and to what extent?
So again, Senator, the Global Carbon Project measures or captures the
Didn't answer
the
my
various,
question,
the
Dr.
various
Mayfield.
emissions that are made
Roberts,
around the
give him
globe,
some time.
and that is the numbers that have been captured when they show that emissions are increasing.
Chair, when someone's asked a question and they say something but don't answer the question, that is not answering the question.
Order, Senator Roberts. Senator Roberts, in that case, Dr Mayfield would have been 5 to 10 seconds into his answer, so it's pretty early
Yeah.
to form a strong view about what he was going to give you.
I must admit,
Senator Roberts, I don't seek to dictate how you ask your questions or what questions you ask, but only that you show courtesy to officials so they can answer your questions to the best of their abilities.
with respect, Chair, I deserve the respect of being answered properly when I'm asking questions on behalf of my constituents who are going through a lot of pain.
Senator Roberts, if you're not satisfied with the answers that you receive, please ask another follow-up question, but don't interrupt officials in the middle of their answers.
I'll ask it again. Have global attempts to cut human production of carbon dioxide shown up in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, and if so, how and to what extent?
So, Senator, in terms of the emissions being made, whether there's attempts to cut them or whether that's how they are naturally, they are captured through the Global Carbon Project. That's the accounting process that's worked to do that, and that shows that emissions overall are still increasing.
How emissions are still increasing. We've just been
Globally.
through a COVID depression, and we've just been through 2009. We had lower use of carbon dioxide than in 2008 in the recession that was global except for Australia. And in both cases, the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere have continued to rise, despite human production falling dramatically, especially in the last 9 months. And yet you're telling me you can see it? They're going up, Dr. Mayfield. So I'll ask again for the third time, then I'll leave it. Have global attempts to cut human production of carbon dioxide, particularly in the recession that was in 2009 when global production of carbon dioxide from human activity decreased and have decreased considerably in the last 7 months, shown up in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, and if so, how and to what extent? Please answer how they show up and to what extent.
So, Senator, the measure is the CO2 signal that's in the atmosphere. It's a well-mixed system, so it's represented well across the globe. If you want to refer to periods like 2009, which is at the end of the global financial crisis, there were slight changes in the rate of climb of these measurements. So you can see inflections like that. I don't have the details on the specific numbers and how that changed, but there are inflection points. But in terms of the longer term trend, it's still on the up.
Could you please send me the inflection points? I want to see the data, please, because from what I've seen of global atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, they've continued to rise relentlessly, despite no inflection whatsoever. So I'd like to see the inflection points. I'd like to see how much, and I'd like to see when.
So, Senator,
Is that clear? How much and when? Is that clear, Dr. Mayfield?
So what we'll provide you with is the Cape Grim record, which is the continuous record of CO2 content in the atmosphere.
That's CO2 at Cape Grim. Could you give me the global?
So as I said, CO2 is a gas that mixes well across the globe. There is minor variations, but overall there's a very good indication of the time series of the CO2 measurement.
Could you show me the global levels? I want to know how much it's changed and when.
As I said before, Senator, that work is done periodically through the Global Carbon Project. They report annually. We will provide you with some of that work as well as the Cape Grim measurements.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Roberts.